I made 6 level 25s, and most recently I made the 25 hardcore Druid. I originally played the 25 Druid non-hardcore, and it was pretty brutal. I died a lot, so I thought more out of the fun of it than anything, let me try playing a hardcore Druid and see what's going on. Plus, I plan to actually play hardcore Druid on launch of the actual game. People are saying that I'm crazy for wanting to do that, but what I decided was, let's actually play the hardcore, switch the way I'm thinking. Instead of thinking I got to make the Druid as close to a sorcerer necromancer where they're just destroying everything on the map, I'm not trying to make it as close to those classes as possible. And instead, I'm going to focus on the fact I'm playing a hardcore. How can I stay alive? How can I make sure I do not die, make sure I'm tanky, be able to complete things? And it went quite well. I actually farmed a lot of legendaries. I found the build that allows me to do basically everything without the possibility of dying. In fact, it is a build that allows you to get out of CC instantly, has enough base resistances that I don't think there's only any one ability in Act 1 currently that can kill me in a one shot. And if I do get stuck with a CC that would kill me, I have the ability to immediately get out of CC and stabilize. This build also has single target damage, like I have not seen before within the Druid itself. Kitty's running on my keyboard here. I'm able to nuke bosses more or less instantly. I am able to kill minions fairly quickly and easily. I have vulnerability, lots of CC, and burst potential, all while having the ability to kill things like bosses completely safely with no possibility of dying. I also can face tank bosses, meaning I can eat all of their abilities and still cannot die, and I have enough damage that I don't have to tank them long enough that I run out of potions or anything like that. It's actually a build that has turned the Druid from feeling completely hopeless to feeling like I'm playing softcore on Druid when I'm going. Now, couple of disclaimers before I get into this, because I know some people are going to misunderstand what I'm saying. This build does not, will not, and never will compete with a sorcerer, necromancer, any of these other classes that are going for things like clear speed, farming, completionist stuff quicker. Meaning if on launch what you care about is having a character beat content, it will not beat that content sooner than other classes. However, if you're playing hardcore, this build will give you a significant decrease in the likelihood of you dying and will make the hardcore experience way less frustrating. That is the purpose of what I'm about to show you, and is its purpose in its entirety. Now, let me go ahead and actually show you some clips of this happening before I actually show you real life examples. So this build is interesting because it's one of the only times I see Companion actually do something. It doesn't really make sense to use Companions like the Werewolf one here in Softcore, because you're not really concerned about dying. And the Companions do a couple things for hardcore. One is it gives the boss and other minions something to attack other than yourself. So it distracts them, more or less, is an easier way to put it. The other thing is the Werewolf jump. When you have the items I'll show you at the end here, it does actually fairly substantial single target damage. And I'm talking like 6,000 in some cases, where, because each one of those werewolves will hit, and you can see there, and I've hit up to 2,000 white damage per werewolf. So we're talking, and I'm saying up to, because it does seem fairly buggy based upon the position of the wolf. Sometimes you'll see 3 jumps, but only 1 damage. Sometimes you'll see 3 jump, 1 of them will damage, and then the other one will randomly like use that damage on another minion later. So it seems buggy at best. However, when it works as you would think it would work, intended like 3 dudes jump, do 3 little bits of damage, the burst is surprising. It will actually catch you off guard with how much burst will happen, especially because they're not exactly slacking when they're not just jumping with the active ability, because they actually spread rabies. So when you're fighting monsters, like they'll spread rabies. You can see here it's got rabies on the minions. And when you're fighting ads, they'll spread rabies as well. So you actually have poison damage. Then you're using the creeper, which immobilizes. And I'll show you some other legendary items that make me even tankier because of that later. That, for instance, the Earthen Bulwark gets buffed based upon how many people I've CC'd. Up to 100% buff. It's a Druid item. Basically doubles the amount of Earthen Bulwark I get. And then we're getting Fortify off that. We're getting Tanky off that. And then we have the basic attack that's giving us 25% damage reduction. If you choose to go the Cyclone armor variant instead of using like Tornado or something, then you get the bonus damage reduction from that as well. And the thing is, the minions you don't really need to worry about building yourself with a ton of damage because the minions have you covered. So if you're playing hardcore Druid, this build has made me so far be able to ignore all of the mechanics, and there's some pretty easy ways to tell what to do when, which I'm going to, if you follow the concept I'm about to lay out, it seems like my guess would be that this build will just work for hardcore. I just don't think I'm going to die. I mean, I think unless it's user error, I disconnect or something like that. Or I go with a world boss, or I go into the next difficulty too quickly and I overestimate it or something. In a fair fight, I think this build will more or less just kind of keep you alive. So maybe you want to try it. That's why I want to share it. So let me show you how the legendaries work. Okay, so it's not min-maxed yet, blah, 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 blah. However, it's decent. I'm going to show you the skills first. I'm going to walk you through the items, and I'll talk about any variety of change potential and a little opportunity for flavor context in there. So if we go in here, basically, Storm Strike, that's the basic we're using, okay? The concept of this build is we're trying to play hardcore, and we don't want to die. And it would just lower the skill floor all the way down so that mouth breathers like me can play the game without dying. That's the idea of the build, okay? So with that in mind, that is the lens by which we are doing this, and so far it's been working actually decently. I've had 3 friends die in the same party as me, all the way from rogue, necromancer, or whatever, while we were fighting stuff, and it was just stuff that I'm just like, hey, just like smacking with a polearm, and I'm just totally fine. So here's how it works. 25% damage reduction, Storm Strike, on basic, you take less damage. So therefore, that's our basic attack, okay? Immobilize, because there's some synergy with Immobilize that will come. And then we have Vulnerability, because we want them to take more damage. Pretty much that simple. And this is for a burst window opportunity that we have. Then we have multiple options here. You could go Pulverize if you want. It's not bad. I'm going the Tornado variant, and I'll talk about why when we get to Legendary items. Basically, you can make the Tornadoes automatically track people, etc. with certain legendaries, depending upon your build. So if you look at here, cast an additional Tornado, and then Tornadoes slow people. I like the slow, but even though technically, you could probably do better with the Vulnerability in terms of overall damage, the slow is kind of nice because the AI with our companions, which is, yes, companions. We are actually going to be using companions with this build. I know, a little weird, but it kind of works. The AI with the companions could be better, to be fair, and the slow for this will help with our werewolf companions. Yes, we have werewolf companions. So moving along here, this one doesn't really matter too much. Okay, Tornado may be the best variant of it, but you could go probably literally any of these. Let's just continue, though. So this is where it starts to get somewhat important. Now, Earthen Bulwark isn't exactly the most exciting skill in the game. However, it does have one mechanic which is absolutely ridiculous, is it applies Unstoppable if you have this here. Now, Unstoppable makes it where you're immune to CC, which is quite good, all right? But more importantly, it removes all impairing effects. So if you were familiar with like why Human in World of Warcraft was OP in PvP, it's because their base ability allowed them to remove effectively detrimental effects and was a very useful ability in PvP. Now, this would obviously be good in PvP, but it is also good in hardcore, where things like lag, just being an actual boomer with your gameplay, what have you, can get you killed when you get speared by some absolute bullshit mechanics. For instance, there is a minion in this game called a Revenant that has a big long sword, and he does this animation, which we should all be able to dodge. However, sometimes you don't, and he will stab forward, spear you through your chest, and it does like 80% of your life, but more importantly, it locks you out of actually controlling your character for like 3.5 seconds. It's a little bit OP. So what this ability allows you to do is the second you are hit by a, oh no, I up type of moment, you hit this panic button, which will remove all of those effects and make it where any further ones aren't going to have. This is your get out of jail free card. But it gets better because it gives you Fortify. All right? 18% base life as Fortify, so you can take reduced damage. Fortify is also good with some other combinations we'll talk about in a bit. quite exciting. So more or less, this is your get out of jail free card. Okay. And it is one of the only ways that if you screw up, you are not completely dead yet. For instance, the spear one I talked about, but also if you're trying to heal, you need to not be in the middle of being CC'd to spam your potions. I mean, you can't just spam heal even while you're CC. You can't sit there and spam the Q button. It's not going to work. So you have to be able to go unstoppable to heal. Now, because of this, before we continue the skills, I'm going to show you one other thing here. And again, this is specifically for hardcore. Again, that's why I like healing, I care about, and getting rid of CC. None of this would matter if you're playing softcore. Oh no, I died. The worst thing that happens is I either have to go repair at the blacksmith, or look at me, I got 5 more potions now. Like, it doesn't really matter. Whereas in hardcore, that's everything that matters. So becoming injured while crowd control grants you unstoppable. Now, being injured is basically being at a state, I believe it's 20% HP. I could be off here on this actual number of it, but the injured state of having low HP, or maybe it's below 80%, actually 20% down of health, because healthy is 80% above. Being injured effectively grants you unstoppable. So the point is, whatever percentage it is off the top of my head, I forget, when you need it, you become unstoppable as well. So if you actually, let's say, get speared by CC, you earthen bulwark, you're back to full HP, you didn't trigger this one yet, now you're injured, okay, from the next one, you still have unstoppable, and this is on a separate cooldown from your earthen bulwark, so you have another get out of jail free card. Now, I paired this with the boots while unstoppable, and for 2 seconds after, you gain increased movement speed and can move through enemies. So again, you can see the synergy here. So when I use bulwark to get me out of jail free with the stun, I immediately can move through enemies as well, and I have let's get out of here. You know, I have a boost to my step. Okay, evade also grants me 40% movement speed. So going unstoppable, space barring out, running through the minions, I'm out of there. Okay, basically safety. So these are some of my safety concerns when we're looking at some of these items in here. You can see this is why I potentially use Tornado. We seek up the targets. Now, here's the other one. This is another, I don't think it's mandatory, but this helps a lot. It triggers off of your vine creepers, okay? Gain 24% amount bonus to your next bulwark for each enemy you crowd control up to 100%. So basically, using your vine creepers here, your companion, will instantly proc this thing to 100%, which will then allow you, if you're hitting, multiple minions, obviously, it only takes a few of them, 4 of them, and then you get 100%. And now my bulwark is, instead of 50% of my base life, now I have 100% of my base life, and I'm basically getting a full HP bar worth of a barrier while I'm unstoppable, while I can move through minions, while I have bonus movement speed. So you can see I have a lot of this stacked. Obviously, I'm going on this too. I have bonus to companion, but also bonus to defensive skills as my preference. Damage reductions from distant enemies. Again, I'm going pure tanky here, okay? 5% resistance to all elements. I want to stay alive. I'm trying to stay alive. You're also going to notice I have +1 companion, and then here I have +2 rank of wolves. Now this is where we start to explain the damage. So most of my damage is coming from these guys right here. These are the wolves all grown up, and now they've evolved a little bit. They are the missing link and can fight on 2 feet. Now, this ability comes from the weapon, which not only makes them werewolves, but it makes it where they can spread rabies, as well as gives them a spread, if it's on a 200 weapon, between 150 and 200% additional damage. That's an additional damage proc that we're going to be getting off of these werewolf companions. So if they're doing that much more damage, and then we pair that with something like this, gain 1 additional companion. In addition, your companion skills deal 125% bonus damage, which is a mid-row for this item. You can see where we start to stack multiple procs of damage. And now you can start to understand why we're using the werewolves, which also have 20% increased damage to immobilize, stun, slowed, or poisoned enemies. They poison themselves. The vine creeper we've been talking about both immobilizes and poisons. And then the stun, etc., the slows will go off your tornado. And the stun, you're not really stunning, to be fair, unless you're using something like pulverize. Now, because I am focused on tanky, I also have this very common one, which is damaging an elite enemy grants you a barrier, as I do prefer to have additional ways of having barrier or any kind of tanky stat. Again, I'm looking for purely defensive type of properties. Now, I have another ring that I would love to use instead of my core skills deal bonus damage, because the core skills is where it pairs with Tornado on the gloves. And this is where if you were doing quite well in PvE defensively and you didn't need the additional 20% non-physical damage from Cyclone just being there, you could actually remove this one off your bar. You could swap this with Tornado. You could then go and say, okay, well, now I actually have a fairly decent core skill that has bonus damage from the core skills deal based upon my Fortify. So now you can see, okay, well, Bulwark gives me Fortify. I've got 76 out of 420 Fortify from that. And then that's going to give me bonus damage on the core skill, which is my Tornado, which compare with the Seeking, etc. So even your defensive properties will give you a little bit of bonus damage. There is another item to mention. This variant here, when you use shape-shifting skill that changes your form, gains 55 life. If you're at full life, gain the same amount as Fortify. This is actually amazing because if you notice it, it has no cooldown. So if you are using, instead of Tornado, you decide to go with Pulverize, for instance, to have the stun as well, then this item could actually be quite powerful, which is why I have kept it. And there's really something to be said for your companions gain the bonuses from Bestial Rampage key passive, because if you look at the abilities and you look all the way down here, right here, Bestial Rampage, after being a werewolf for 2.5 seconds, gain attack speed, or after being a werebear, it deal increased damage. So this would give you bonus attack speed on your companions, which are a large percentage of your damage. Now, there's one other item I use, which I think is, I don't want to say like kind of OP. It feels kind of OP. It doesn't really give you any bonus damage, but I heal for 7.1 for each enemy that's close up to 42 life per second. That is, if you look at this, that is a 10% life per second regeneration that I'm getting for free, more or less all of the time. So having that paired with the barrier basically means when I do use the barrier, I instantly start regenerating my life because the barrier is absorbing the damage, and I'm probably surrounded by people if I just got stunned, etc. Anyway, then I also have the bonus unstoppable movement speed, etc., etc., etc. You see where I'm going with this. So this build is relying on basically being unkillable, while my companions that actually do insane damage because we have so many ranks. We have 3 item contribution wolf ranks in this, so we're doing significant damage with the werewolves, paired with the fact that on the weapon where it matters the most, we also have werewolf damage. I have bonus overpowered damage because I was messing around with Pulverize, if you're wondering. And then you actually pair that with the additional damage from the companion. That's where we're getting this nuke, like this 6,000 damage type of nuke, for instance, all while being extremely tanky. You can also use the whirlwind if you want. There you go. You can see some of the damage there. Now, obviously, these are just normal minions, etc. But here, let me give you an example. This is what it kind of ends up looking like when you actually do something here. You can use the Tornado if you want. But for the most part, if I just let the companions go, you see they're hitting 450, 500. There's 250, 462 on the crit. That's basically how their damage ends up looking like. When you actually use it on whatever it is you want it to kill, it will kill it instantly. Now, if you want the things to die quicker than the Tornado or the companions or whatever, but then you have multiple other options. For instance, you have the Vine Creeper, which will grab everything and sort of immobilize them. You have the Raven options as well. But for the most part, you're using the companions to basically kill everything while being mostly invulnerable yourself. Now, we constantly want to spam the Storm Strike because this is going to give us reduced damage taken as well. And then you can see it's fairly easy. It's not exactly like Necromancer where you have this giant army that's killing everything everywhere, but you are incredibly tanky. You are resistant if a CC moment happens. You're not going to instantly get destroyed during that moment. And it's been working pretty good for Druid, you know? And I'm been kind of a fan so far of this build. I don't think it's absolutely the best build in the game or anything, but I mean, look at that damage right there. That's 750 out of the Ravens. You have bonus from the companion. You get vulnerability. You get a ton of CC, and it's safe. It's safe, and if you're thinking about playing hardcore on the start and you want to play Druid and you're worried about, look at that row, and you're worried about what's coming around the corner because you don't know, you know, maybe give this shot a build. That's all I'm saying. If you like this video at all, consider actually liking the video. And that's about it. Have a great day.